What's up, everyone? Welcome to Back to the Future, the podcast that takes a trip down Philly sports memory lane and asks the question, what if? I'm your host, Jim Montgomery, and here we are with episode number 2 for the new year. It is 2023, season 2, episode 2. And if you haven't done so already, last week we talked about the life and times of Buddy Ryan, how he may or may not have gotten a raw deal from Norman Braman when he was fired, as well as, which I was shocked with the feedback for this one. And the overwhelming majority of the feedback was, yeah, Buddy Ryan got a raw deal. Love those teams. A lot of people grew up on those teams or heard their parents or older siblings talking about those teams. But there's a handful that really let me have it about taking off my Kelly Green glasses and stop drinking the Kelly Green Kool-Aid. The Kelly Green jerseys suck and the Eagles suck. Why do you like this guy? And I was shocked because I thought for the most part Buddy was universally loved. But hey, everybody is entitled to an opinion. And the other feedback I got a lot, which I was shocked about, and more people felt this way than what I had said, was when I compared the disappointment of the Buddy Ryan years to the Andy Reid years. To me, and maybe because I was so invested in them as a kid growing up, they were way more disappointing than what the Andy Reid teams did, just because they went to the NFC Championship games. They ultimately went to a Super Bowl. The expectations, I guess, were higher. But I was more than what I thought, and probably the majority of the feedback I got was that no, the Andy Reid teams, because of those high expectations, were more disappointing. But again, this is America. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. Doesn't mean your opinion is correct, because you would be wrong. The Buddy Ryan era was way more disappointing. But right or wrong, disagree or agree with me, I do appreciate the feedback, so continue to do that. As the episodes keep going, more and more of you are sending me feedback and having a discussion with that. I'm thinking at some point I might get some type of like a Discord channel or something where we can just have some of these conversations in between episodes. It might be, I don't know, something that we could do, but I want to get more people to reach out before I would do that. But again, thank you. I appreciate it, and it's always fun because I think the people that I know and I'm friends with or like acquaintances with, they tend to be a lot more open and honest with me than the people I don't know, which is kind of funny. Usually you would think it would be the opposite, but no, some of the people that I know that I'm kind of close to really let me have it with the whole Andy Reid versus Buddy Ryan thing. But hey, like I said, I appreciate it. If you're that passionate about it, to me it means you're listening. So getting into this episode number 2, it is NFL playoff time. And last week the Eagles clinched that first seed, which is huge. They have the bye, so they're sitting at home right now, watching, just seeing everybody beat up on each other and seeing which way the chips may fall. So I want to get into that today. The big first thing we're going to talk about is just playoff football, preview the 20. And so before I get into that, this is something that always confused me, because on the other podcast of This Day in Philly Sports History that I do every day, it throws me off sometimes. So this is the 2022 football season, but the playoffs are in 2023. So is this weekend, is it the 2023 Super Wildcard games, Wildcard weekend, or is it the 2022 Super Wildcard weekend? And it really throws me off. I like the other day I did the 1981 NFC Championship game when the Eagles beat the Cowboys, but when I went to kind of get some of the stats and look it up, I typed in 1981 NFC Championship game, the 49ers and the Cowboys came up, the catch with Dwight Clark. So just kind of one of those confusing things when the season rolls over, when the regular season is majority in one year and the playoffs are in another year. And maybe this is just something my mind goes to, and maybe I'm crazy, but let me know. Does anybody else notice that? So I'm assuming this is probably the 2022 playoff preview we're going to do, and we'll kind of go from there. But I want to go through each of the games. not going to go too in-depth with handicapping because I want to focus more on the Eagles and what I see them doing. But since this is Back to the Future and we tend to focus on the what if, I do want to think about, because Jalen Hurts obviously was an MVP candidate before he got hurt. But I think you got to give Howie Roseman some MVP votes for this Eagles team. And I'll get more into that, but his offseason moves and his drafts and this and that. I mean, yeah, Jalen Hurts is the MVP of this team, but I don't know, man. I think Howie Roseman deserves some of those first place votes. So we're going to get there. But first, let's take a look at the playoffs and just go through and see where we're at. But playoffs, don't talk to me about playoffs. And every time I say the word playoffs, I'd be remiss, and there is a Philly tie here, but is there a better press conference than Jim Mora when he was with the Colts and one of the members of the press asked him about what he thought about their playoffs, and he was, playoffs? But playoffs? Don't talk to me about playoffs. I just hope we can win a game. And I think it was like his voice coupled with the delivery. I don't know. There's been some good coach press conferences. You have Denny Green, Herm Edwards, Mike Gundy. But for my money, man, nobody's better than Jim Mora. And I just think the playoff one, every time playoffs come around and they're like, playoffs, they clinch the playoffs. And the Philly connection is he coached the Philadelphia Stars when the Philly had a USFL team. So figured give Jim Mora a nice little shout out there for, in my mind, one of the best coach press conferences of all time. But getting to the playoffs for this year, sorry, I won't do it anymore. But I think this year, probably more than any other, it's wide open. And I feel like it's wide open on both sides. I don't necessarily think, you had the Eagles pretty. If Jalen Hurts never would have gotten hurt, I would say that they were probably the most dominant team in both leagues this year. But it was like, then Jalen got hurt. And then at one point it was the Bills, and they struggled. Kansas City, and then they lost a game. You have, at one point, I still don't know where it came from, but Dallas was a favorite. I still don't know where they came from. Beginning of the year, people thought Tampa Bay was going to be better than Minnesota, and they kind of dropped off. The Giants were up there, and they kind of fell back. And, Cincinnati, they started off slow. It was Baltimore, and then they kind of flip-flopped. And then San Diego, the Chargers, Los Angeles Chargers at one point were high, and they fell off, and now they're back up. The Dolphins were up there, and then completely fell off a cliff. So I don't necessarily think there is one team that is like, they're going to win. Like last year, the Rams, you kind of knew, everybody was kind of looking forward to the Rams-Chiefs showdown, and then Cincinnati messed that up. And even that game was a good one. I think that's what everybody thought. And just the year before, like everybody knew that there was no way Tom Brady, once he got there, was going to lose, especially with a new team. But this year, I don't necessarily see that. I would have said at the beginning of the season, if you go back to my NFL preview, I thought the Bills would be one of those teams, and they still might be. I just don't know where I don't know. Nobody is running away with it. So this weekend in the wild card round, I think the first game you got Jacksonville and the Chargers. Everybody's on the Chargers, which leads me to believe this is going to be a Jacksonville win. I think Jacksonville wins this game because everybody is basically saying, and maybe the people I'm talking to are listening to, but I feel like everybody's like, oh, the Chargers are a sleeper for the Super Bowl. They have the quarterback, they have the receivers, they have the running back. They're this, they're that. And I think everybody's sleeping on Doug and the Jaguars. And look at what Doug did when he was in Philly. He got that quick turnaround, cleaned up Chip Kelly's mess. So I'm thinking Jacksonville over the Chargers. And then you got Cincinnati and Baltimore. I don't even think this game is going to be close. Cincinnati's going to roll them. Lamar doesn't look like he's going to play. Hundley doesn't even look like he's going to be able to play. So they might be down to their third string quarterback. Unless Jim Harbaugh is playing the biggest game of one-upsmanship there is, and Lamar Jackson is completely healthy and ready to go, I think this is a rout. Cincinnati wins. I don't care if it's a division game or not. Same thing in Buffalo. I mean, Tua's out, and you have some of the emotional stuff with Buffalo. But I think, and this might sound weird, and I don't mean it to come off, but I think the fact that they had it was such an emotional week, and everything is died down now. Damar Hamlin's back home. He's actually out of the hospital, which is amazing. I think if Tua was playing, they could be in a position for a letdown here, but I just don't think. I think Buffalo over Miami. I think they might have one more emotional game, and then they could be starting to get ready for a letdown and just the exhaustion setting in, but we'll see. All right, let's move to the NFC. Tampa Bay and Dallas. I mean, what an ugly, stupid game. I don't think you can count out Tampa Bay. I mean, who knows? The Cowboys very legitimately could put up 500 yards and score 50 points and shut out the Buccaneers. But I don't see that happening. I think more likely what happens is Dallas jumps out early. Tom Brady comes back. Dak throws a couple interceptions. Game over. Here's my first upset pick. Giants over Minnesota. I feel like one lower seeded team is going to win, and I don't necessarily see it in the AFC. Like I said, everybody's saying the Chargers. I like Dougie P. So I like the Giants because I think the Vikings are overrated. I think the Giants are slightly underrated, as much as I hate to admit that, as much as they're my team that I hate the most other than the Cowboys. Their quarterback sucks, but I think with Saquon Barkley, they're probably going to be able to control the game a little bit. And like I said, I think Minnesota is overrated. I like Jefferson, but I think they need a quarterback. I'm not a believer in Kirk Cousins. So, and here's another one. I think everybody, and it is what it is, but I feel like San Francisco is way overrated right now, and I don't necessarily see Brock Purdy being as good as everybody says. If you look at his check down, like his passing, he doesn't go deep, and the fact that you have Christian McCaffrey and that helps, but I don't know. At some point, it's going to catch up to him, and I think Seattle is live to win this game. I do think San Francisco wins it, but don't be surprised if the Seahawks win. All right, and then since this is all hypothetical, we'll go through this a little bit more quickly. I do see Kansas City beating Jacksonville or LA, no matter who gets there in the next round. I think the rest is what's going to matter for them. Jacksonville is not quite there yet, but Dougie P is going to have them. I don't necessarily think this is a blowout. I think he's going to play his former coach, Andy Reid, close. But ultimately, KC is going to be too much to them. Cincinnati is going to beat Buffalo. I think the emotions are going to catch up with Buffalo. And again, I don't mean that in any disrespectful way to anybody, but I think just the emotional of what they had the past week or so is going to eventually catch up with them. And don't forget, Cincinnati is still pissed off about the way all this shit played out. Not necessarily the game getting canceled, but they're getting fucked by the NFL with the not being able to do this. They could have had the second seed with not being able to catch the one seed. They had a shot for that. So I think they're going to come in and be a little pissed off. Joe Burrow, I like a lot. I just see, I think it's going to finally catch up, and since he's going to beat Buffalo, because Joe Burrow has already proven he can win on the road. So I got Cincinnati over Buffalo. The Eagles finally get to play. I think the Giants are going to blow their load against Minnesota and be done. I think they're going to be happy to win one game. They're going to come in. The Eagles are going to be rested. The Eagles are going to be right mentally. Lane is already dropping WWE type promos. He's going to be fired up and ready to go. I think you got your quarterback going in and putting in extra work on days off. Everybody's going to be healthy. Josh Sweat is coming back. He's going to be, I think he returned to practice today. So things are going to get right for the Eagles. And I don't necessarily see it being a blowout like it was up in the Meadowlands or whatever. I forget the name of the stadium now. I don't see it being a blowout like that, but I don't see it being nearly as close as it was last week in Philly either. And don't give me that bullshit about, oh, it's tough to beat a team 3 times in 1 year. How many times have I seen the Cowboys beat the Eagles 3 times in 1 year, including the playoffs? I've seen the Giants do it to the Eagles. So, and that last game shouldn't even count because the Giants, or it counts, but like the Giants had their second team in. So I don't know if that really matters. So don't give me that. Yeah, it's tough, but whatever. All right, and here we go. Tampa Bay versus San Francisco in the next divisional game. Tampa Bay. Brock Purdy, no way he's beating Tom Brady with a chance to go to the NFC Championship game. Brady has one last little heroic left in him to get to the NFC Championship game. So NFC or the championship game round. Got KC and Cincinnati. I think KC gets their revenge at home. I know Cincinnati's going to be pissed off because of the way it played out, but having that home field for Kansas City goes to the Super Bowl, and then there's no way Tampa Bay has no run game, which means the Eagles are going to be able to unleash that pass rush on Tom Brady, who's probably going to have a tough game the week before against San Francisco, but there's no way Brock Purdy's beating him. So Eagles over Tampa Bay, setting up the Super Bowl, which I like to call the Andy Reid Bowl. Andy Reid coaching against his former team. And then who do I pick for this? I mean, honestly, this is a Philly-based podcast. Do you really think I'm going to pick against the Eagles in the Super Bowl? But I have some little bit of stats and rationale to back it up. I think the fact that Kansas City lost Tyreek Hill this year, or got rid of Tyreek Hill, I should say, that's going to be huge because there's not necessarily anybody that's like a superstar, like, oh my gosh, this guy is great type wide receiver on there. The running game is a little I mean, it's not bad. I think Patrick Mahomes being able to move around will help that up. I think because the Eagles have such a deep defensive line and a deep and a good pass rush, I think what that's going to do is help. They're going to have to contain him, don't get me wrong, but it's going to come down to the secondary, and the secondary is pretty good for the Eagles. So I think that's going to have a lot. The key to that game is going to be keeping Travis Kelce in check. I mean, he's going to get his, but look what they did a couple years ago in the Super Bowl against Gronk. Gronk went off, but they were able to hold him in check for good stretches of that game. Now, on offense, I think the Eagles are going to have to – it's going to come down to Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is going to have to be the MVP, but I think the way the Kansas City's defense is, they're going to be able to get their shots. I think A.J. Brown's going to be able to open things up deep, which will allow Devontae Smith to get some catches in there. I think it's a good matchup, and I know it's crazy. And a lot of people are saying that, or would probably say, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But to me, I'd rather the Eagles play Kansas City because I think that's a better matchup for them than it would be Buffalo. Just because I don't know. I just feel like Buffalo has better receivers with Patrick Mahomes is mobile, but I just feel like Josh Allen moves around better and is able to make more things happen. You don't necessarily see this year anyway. Like I feel like you see more Josh Allen runs than you do Patrick Mahomes. And Buffalo's defense is a little bit better, I feel, than Kansas City's too. So Super Bowl pick. Eagles over the Chiefs in the Andy Reid Bowl. There you go. Make sure you let me know what your picks are. I'm probably way off base. None of this is going to even come close to being happen, and it'll probably be Jacksonville over Seattle or something crazy like that. But let me know what you think. But I think having both of those teams having that first round bye is going to be huge, especially when things are so even, I think, and there's not that runaway team, and things are not necessarily like, oh my gosh, this is the odds-on favorite. I think having not only the home field, but having that extra week to rest, get healthy, get right is going to help both of those teams out. All right, so there's the playoffs. All right, I said I wasn't going to do it too much more, but there's the playoff picks. So because this is a what if type podcast, we're going to go and we're going to talk about Howie Roseman. And since they're going to be Super Bowl champs this year, got to look at how they get there. So before you talk about how they got there this year, got to look at where they were last year. I feel last year was a transition year for them. It was Sirianni's first year as coach, first year as a head coach, and I believe any level. Hurts' first year as a starter. It was the first year for the 17-game season. So there's just a lot of things that were just new and different. And you could tell as soon as it was the first year with fans back. I mean, for the most part in 2020, there was, at least in Philly, there was I think maybe one or two games where fans were allowed. And when fans were allowed, there was, it was like a third or a fourth of the way filled. So you could tell that it was a rough start. They started off 2-5. It was definitely growing pains. If you think back, it was a lot of pass-heavy play calling, and ultimately it showed with that record. They lost in Week 7. That's that fifth game to the Raiders. Sirianni, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but he gave that flower speech where he's like, through this turmoil, we're growing the roots under the soil in order to get good, and it's like a flower, and everybody kind of ripped him. And at the time, it was funny, but once he made that speech, they went 7-3 down the stretch, clinched the wild card spot because they beat the Saints and had the tiebreaker, and all this happened after the speech. So there might have been some truth to that, and now, looking back on it from where we sit with the benefit of hindsight, he was right. He was growing, getting his system in there. And I think of all the fan bases here in Philly, we're the most impatient with the Eagles. And I think because we love the team so much and because we've seen the quick turnarounds, I feel as though we're very impatient with them. They did have a little bit of a grace period after the Super Bowl, but I would say by the end of Doug Peterson's run and Carson Wentz's run, I feel like the statute of limitation was completely out of whack on that. But like I said, he made the crazy, silly flower speech, and they went on a run, and technically they're 21-7 since then, including the playoffs. But they did go to the playoffs that year. Like I said, they were the 7th seed, but it was fool's gold. They were 0-6 versus team in the playoffs, so they were kind of a victim of the schedule, which that was the big argument this year. Who have they played? Their schedule is this. Their schedule is that. But either way, they got blown out by the Buccaneers, which why it's going to be kind of funny if Tampa Bay comes into Philly this year and the Eagles are able to get their revenge, and the Eagles it's kind of the rubber match in the playoffs against Tom Brady. Or no, I guess it wouldn't be because of I forgot about the first Super Bowl. Anyway, I feel like whatever. Tom Brady sucks. But offensively, they were the number one rushing offense last year after the switch. And they were 25th in passing. So I feel as though the expectations were there that you needed Hurts to take the leap. Defensively, they were okay against giving up yards, but they had 0 pass rush, and they couldn't get turnovers. They had 29 sacks and 16 turnovers, which was pretty pathetic. So it was defensively. And I remember, Gannon, we were all ripping him, much like at some points we were this year. But then it's they were a top 10 defense. They just couldn't get a pass rush, and they couldn't do anything. So there's just a lot of questions heading into the offseason. Then, almost like you put the bat signal up and you call Batman, put the Eagles symbol in the air, and here comes Howie Roseman out of his office. Or I should say he went into his office and got to work. So prior to the draft, they had 3 first-round draft picks. And I completely forgot about this. But he was able to trade the 16th and the 19th pick in the draft for the 18th pick, and then a 3rd, a 7th, and a 1st for next year, which is huge because it was the Saints, and it is now the number 10 pick. And they also have the Saints' 2nd-round pick next year, which gets lost a lot of times because everybody talks about that first one. So he kind of fleeced them somewhat, but he wasn't finished. So that would have been right then and there. That would have been a good start to go into the draft. Then the draft came. He drafted Jordan Davis, who's a beast. Like, I went to camp this year with Thatcher. This man is huge. He was like, that guy is big. Drafted Cam Jurgens because Jason Kelsey wanted him as his replacement. So he's grooming him to be the next center. Nakobe Dean, which was a huge value pick from that Georgia team. And then, you use one of those first-round picks you still had for A.J. Brown. So, ultimately, you were able to get a lot of big guys on defense. You got your stud receiver, which that's the one thing. If Howie Roseman is Superman, drafting a wide receiver is his kryptonite. And actually, I don't even know if it's maybe just his kryptonite. It's just something in that building down there where they can't draft. But we'll get into that later. Then free agency came. Hassan Reddick, Zach Pascal, Kazir White. We talked about James Bradbury, or getting A.J. Brown. James Bradbury, Gardner Johnson through a trade. Robert Quinn through a trade. Linville Joseph, if I can say his name right. Ndamukong Suh. So he went out and got these players. A lot of defensive guys, and he's trying to, like, that defense was not that good last year when it came to pass rush, but he saw the weakness, he saw an opportunity, and pounced. So what impact did that have on this season? And yes, I'm going to give it an asterisk if you're scoring at home for some of these records because there's an extra game, but so what? I think you win the Super Bowl, nobody cares if there was 16, 17, 12, 84, whatever amount of games. So on offense, well, first of all, as a team, they won 14 games, which is the most they've ever won in franchise history. Could have been more, but who cares? You don't want to get greedy. Devontae and AJ both had over 1,000 yards. It was like the first time that they've ever had 2 receivers go over 1,000 yards, I think. For Brown, he set the record for all-time yards in the season for the Eagles, breaking Mike Quick's record. Devontae Smith had the most receptions ever by a wide receiver for the Eagles. I think he ended up with 94 or 96. And if you're wondering, Zach Ertz had 100 and some odd the one year before they got rid of him. Most points they scored in a season, 477. Jalen Hurts was the MVP until he got banged up. They've been 17-1 in his last 18 regular season starts. And for my money, I think that game against the Saints, it shows he is the MVP and just how valuable he is to the Eagles. Because with or without Lane, the Saints were able to expose Gardner Minshew for what he was. That doesn't happen if Jalen Hurts is in there. Sure, it might be a close game, but that, to me, shows you why he's the MVP. So let's talk about defense, as that seemed to be Howie's focus. And there were 4 players with double-digit sacks, and they all did that prior to 17 players with double-digit sacks. They all did it prior to the 17th game, yeah. I'm like, wait a minute, and as I'm thinking about that, because BG had his 10th sack against the Saints. But Reddick had 16, Temple's own. That was, to me, my favorite pickup that they have. Hargrave had 11, Sweat had 11, Graham had 11. Fletcher even had 7 to boot, and he was like number 5. It was the most sacks the team ever had. Let that sink in for a minute. It was the most sacks the team ever had, and they had some good defenses. You go back to some of those Buddy Ryan defenses, the 91 team, and they never had more sacks than what they did this year. They had 27 turnovers. So all of that to say, Howie saw an area of weakness and was able to address it through the draft, through trades, through free agency, and it came back to him. That defense was terrible. When it came to sacks and turnovers, they were one of the best this year, historically one of the best. They saw that, you know what, we have a decent running game, and with Jalen being able to move, we need some receivers. And Devontae needed somebody else, so he went out, got rid of Rager, brought in A.J. Brown, and then all of a sudden, boom, kind of spread things out. And I think that's the key to this offense, being able to spread all of those teams out and being able to get what they need spacing-wise on the field. And that's what's going to help in the playoffs, because things are going to get tighter, things are going to get moving. So you're going to need A.J. going here and then Devontae going there to open up some lanes for Hurts to run. And then when Hurts, they have to worry about the run, then they have the pass. So I think things are looking good. But what we'd like to do on Back to the Future is talk about what if. So in this case, I already mentioned I feel Howie is the underrated cog in this team. So it's easy to say, oh, he got lucky. But this is kind of what Howie does. If you think about it, everybody said, oh, he got lucky when he was able to move up and trade and draft Carson Wentz. And then, oh, he got lucky with Torrey Smith, and he was able to get Alshon. Oh, he got lucky. LeGarrette Blount. Is it lucky, though? I think for the most part, this is what he does. He's able to make moves that nobody sees coming. And he has, like, a reputation that people don't like to deal with him. Apparently, he's a dick. He's shrewd. He's this. He's that. But he's still able to get that done. So is he lucky or is he good? And I think it's way too easy to say it's luck because of what he does. And so the what if, to me, is not what if Howie didn't get so lucky, because to me, he's proven time and time again that it's not luck. It's just he's a damn good GM. I think it goes back to Chip Kelly. Remember the closet? What if he never got out of that closet? Remember when, I forget the title they gave him, he never got back to being GM. And, I mean, it was famous in Kelsey's Super Bowl speech when he came out a new man. He really did. And obviously there are going to be negative things to say. He's not perfect. He doesn't have a 100% track record on his moves. I mean, Arcega-Whiteside and Rager come to mind. Like, they were huge misses. But I do think that it's underrated that, for the most part, in recent team history, probably go back 30 to 40 years, the Eagles have not been very good with drafting receivers overall. You had Mike Quick, who was sort of like, I wouldn't call him a Hall of Famer, but he was a Pro Bowl decent player, kind of like a second tier down, if you will. Not a superstar, but a tier down. You had Deshaun Jackson, who was kind of in that same realm, but I would kind of even rank him because I don't know how much he could do. You could say Macklin, but at the same time, Macklin only made one Pro Bowl. And like these, and the fact that these are the first three guys that come up as like the best, most consistent receivers they've drafted in the past 30, 40 years, that just goes to show you that, yeah, Howie missed on a few of these, but nobody else has been doing very much for the Eagles anyway. Like, think about the best receivers they've had recently. T.O. pulled in from a trade. A.J. Brown pulled in from a trade. I mean, I guess you could say Calvin Williams and Fred Barnett, but even though, I still say they were second tier. I think Barnett could have been better if he didn't blow out his knee. But I don't know. I mean, it's just not what you want. or I shouldn't say not what you want. It's just not something they do well. It's not an area where they draft consistently well. So, yes, we're talking about Howie. Yes, Howie kind of could have done better when it comes to receivers, but God damn it, I will put him. I don't care what you have to say about him. I think he is underrated and underappreciated. If you saw the clip that was on Twitter when I forget what stadium they were in, but I think it was Arizona, and the sign basically said, "How after they got AJ Brown, Howie, I forgive you," and he said, "Forgive me for your first fucking Super Bowl? Fuck you." That's the kind of that's the Howie Roseman that goes in and fleeces the Saints for a top 10 pick. You got the best record in the league this year, and you got a top 10 pick next year, and you're gonna hate on Howie Roseman. Underrated, underappreciated. All that being said, he does have a very, very punchable face. I would love to punch him in the face sometime. He's just a smug, arrogant son of a bitch. But guess what? As the GM of my team, that's what I want. I'm not going to punch him, but he has a punchable face. And you know, everybody has that friend. I'm not going to mention names, but there's that friend that annoys you, but like he always has like the latest video game or he has like the new next big electronic gadget, or he's the guy that you go to the bar and he'll buy you the drinks. He just wants you to hang out with him. I'll buy you a drink. He annoys the fuck out of you. You want to punch him in the face, but you just can't quit him. You can't quit hanging out with him because you know what? Yeah, I want to play a PS5, or yeah, I don't mind watching the game on an 80-inch TV. Or, yeah, I like free drinks. So that's Howie Roseman to me. But again, all kidding aside, say what you want about him. I mean, what if he never did get out of that closet? Would we be here where we are? I don't think so, man. I feel like he's gotten us out. He was able to trade Carson Wentz. The fact you got anything for Carson Wentz, especially when every team in the league knew you didn't want him anymore. He was still able to trade him and get anything for him. I mean, there you go. The fact that teams know and other GMs know that he's coming for you, and his track record is he doesn't miss and he fleeces people, and people still make deals with him. Come on now. Very underrated, underappreciated. Can't quit him. Still want to punch him in the face, though. But what do you think? Am I crazy? Who do you got in the Super Bowl? Am I just being a homer here? Do the Eagles even have a shot to get there? Are they going to lose in the first round? Let me know what you think. Drop your Super Bowl picks in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe. Also, give me your thoughts on Howie. I got ripped for putting Dougie P on a pedestal earlier this season. Am I putting Howie too high? Should he be higher? Should he be lower? Let me know. Be sure, like I said, to like and subscribe this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to check me out weekly or daily, This Day in Philly Sports History, where it's a quick, probably usually 5 to 10 minute rundown of what happened that day in Philly sports history. Check me out on social media, on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Jimbo_Mont, Instagram, Philly Jimbo. Thank you for listening. Again, tell me what you think. Are my playoff picks way out of base? Way off base. Way out of base. Way off base. Way out of line. You tell me. Give me your thoughts on Howie. Again, I think he's one of those guys that's sort of like people have strong feelings about him one way or the other. But if you take all of the personality things aside and look at what he's done in a vacuum as far as being a GM, tell me what you think. But like I said, thank you for listening. It's going to be nice to just sit back, relax, watch all these teams beat up on each other, and wait to see who the Eagles play. Have yourselves a great week, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.